All right, thank you for staying with Daybreak. Let's continue that discussion at Trevor Mbija at Citizen TV. Kenya is the hashtag Daybreak. We're sampling some of your views. We'll put them up in just a bit. But we know now that the Senate wants the Petroleum Cabinet Secretary John Munyes and his energy counterpart Charles Keter sacked over the recent fuel price hike. Now, senators who were angered by the two cabinet secretaries for skipping summons on Tuesday are now demanding for an in-depth audit of the petroleum levy. But Onyonka, let me start with you. Where does the problem lie, in your view?
The problem actually lies in the fact that look at our borrowing. The truth is, if you don't have minerals and you don't have, for example, oil, or you don't have a fund which is going to raise money for you, which you have most probably, like a sovereign fund, where if you were selling a lot of oil and you had been hedging some of the money that you are using from that to pay for the money you're borrowing,
yeah.
As we speak right now, we are at 11.5 trillion. Some of the loans that the government borrowed were borrowed in commercial terms. Some of them need to be rescheduled. Some of them need... There is so much that is happening in terms of how we got into this. The only way, and I always see this where some people are saying, oh, we need to disregard what the IMF and World Bank are saying. The IMF and World Bank actually they usually give just advisories. They say, listen, the way we see how your country is running, at this rate, tell us how you're going to pay for your debts. If the taxable revenue collected is 1.6 trillion, but we have got debts whereby we need to pay 600 billion from our debts, where are you going to get recurrent expenditure? Where are you going to get money to pay your salaries for the police, the doctors, your teachers? In other words, there are two options that right now you actually can go for. One is completely minimize government expenditure and cut out all the government projects that you're going to do, which again has got an implication because some of those contracts, some of those projects have got contracts which are running.
Yeah.
So you are going to tax fuel, then you are going to tax your phone. You notice I used to have Safaricom running on my phone. When I prepaid, I would pay, let me say, 3,000 shillings in 2 weeks. Now I'm at 3,000 shillings per week.
Yeah.
The amount of money, look at what is happening at Kenya Power. A token that is 500 shillings worth, if you look at the amount of taxes that a Kenyan pays on that token. And then there are also structural issues which we must begin to ask ourselves. I yet haven't found a satisfactory explanation from government explaining to me why we are having independent power suppliers who are supplying electricity using diesel to our Kenya Power lines.
Yeah.
And everybody that we talk about, or when they come to Parliament, they always say, actually the reason why our electricity is expensive is because we are still servicing contracts which were signed 25 years ago by independent power suppliers who are, whether they supply the power or not, they have to be paid.
Yeah.
I mean, so some of these things have to be cleaned out. Some of these things have to be sorted out so that then you can increase your production, then you have your electricity being affordable, then you have inputs.
Yeah.
I mean, we are talking about Kenya has a problem with food insecurity. We don't have enough food. You cannot plant maize. Like me, I'm a maize farmer. Agunia, the harvesting which is going to take place in Trans Nzoia, you cannot be paid more than 2,500 shillings. And yet the inputs you put into the production of the maize is close to, it just beats logic.
Okay.
So
we are simply paying for our debts.
In terms of policy, we are failing. In terms of our microeconomic and macroeconomic policies, the things that need to be put into place economically so that the economy can grow, inflation comes down, so that then you don't punish the ordinary mwananchi who's unable to sustain themselves. Okay. So the problem you have right now, and this falls directly on the lap of the president because he is the chief executive of this country as we speak. The teams that he has at the Treasury should have advised him. But I don't think that the president had any other option.
Yeah.
Because where is he going to get the money which is supposed to be used for paying our debts?
Okay.
Yeah. And finally, we are very, very lucky by now. If you look at the amount of money that we're receiving from the diaspora, our remittances, that is what is helping us afford our imports. Otherwise, we would be in a cock-up.
Okay.
So in terms of policy, I think the Treasury needs to review. The Treasury needs to look back and say, why is it that the country as it is right now, people are actually very, very sad. Why? Because everything is now becoming too expensive to manage.
Okay.
Yes.
Governor Mutua, who is to blame for this?
Well,
and how would you fix it?
Let me be a bit philosophical here, my friend. You know, you're a smart man, and you just came from the United States, and you've seen how the United States runs. In the years 1815 to 1825, during the reign of a president called John Munro, there was what has been referred to in history and economics as the era of good feeling. This was the time when the Americans felt, and it's never been replicated, a good feeling about their life, about their economy, because it's a time when there was massive expansion from the east to the west, the railway lines and everything, but also a feeling when people felt that they had money in the pocket, that life could go on. And which reminds me, because when we look at the leaders that we have in place, and you look at the people who've been given the power to rule over us, and you look at the US, for example, people like Bill Clinton, who won by saying that they wanted to bring hope, going back to the fear of making people feel good about their life because they have money and they have comfort. There's one poet that I really like called Maya Angelou, and a friend of mine was reminding me about Maya Angelou the other day, and she said that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you make them feel. How is this economy making us feel at this particular time? How are we feeling as Kenyans? So it is not just an issue of petrol prices. It's not an issue of just taxation. It's about how are you feeling as a Kenyan, and how is the government making us feel about our day-to-day lives. Let me tell you the truth. People are suffering. You know, people are suffering. And if you look at the decisions, and I've listened to my good friend talk about what is happening, what is the challenge that we have today? The challenge we have in this country is that our economy is not making us feel well. We're not feeling good about ourselves because we don't have money to go around. The cost of living has basically blown up. What is the solution? The solution is what I've talked about here many, many times. We have to cut bureaucracy. We have borrowed and borrowed such that my children's grandchildren will still be paying the loans that we've borrowed today. But to grow the economy, we have to come up with ingenious ways of getting this economy or jump-starting it. And my first take is, let's remove the bureaucracy. This country is full of bureaucracy that actually enhances corruption and enhances, a slow down in flow of money. Look at, I know we are fighting money laundering, we are fighting terrorism, but the stringent rules that have been put by the CBK, for example, by the control of budget in the flow of money to counties, by the treasury in release of funds, that bureaucracy is actually slowing down the economy and making it very difficult for money to flow. That's why people are not feeling money is in the pocket. Going back to the US, when I lived there as a student, there was a man called, can't remember his name, he was the chairman of the Federal Reserve. When he got a cold, everything tanked. And he talked about how you can control the interest rates for the benefit of the country at the time, in the 1990s, how you can control the economy. Because they knew, and people know that as long as people have buying power and there's money going around and you've got a country that is consumer driven, then you grow the country. I've been reading a book written by Sheikh Mohammed for some time now. I read it about the growth of Dubai, the growth of the United Arab Emirates, and it comes down to that. It is, let's facilitate people to do business, let's facilitate people to move forward, let's reduce taxes. Kenyans are heavily taxed, and this is another taxation. We're heavily taxed because we are depending on the little taxation base we've got. We are not broadening the base. We've got economics of just spending and looking at what we are holding without broadening the base. A time has come to say, let us broaden the base.
Yeah.
Let us give people opportunity to trade and do biashara in East and Central Africa. Let us move on. Let's take a leaf from Rwanda, for example. Why aren't Rwandans feeling the pinch? You know, Rwanda has gone through difficult times. Rwanda has also gone through COVID, like we are. But Rwandans are feeling nice. They are feeling happy. You know, where they have money in their pockets. You know, you talk to Rwandese, they're okay. And you talk to a Rwandan, they'll tell you, you know, they have this maxim that everybody talks about: life is precious, live it to the maximum. But you can't live life to the maximum if you're broke, if you're suffering. And so we're in that place in our country where we have to evaluate and reevaluate how we run our economics. The problem is that we are only talking about who is going to take over power, who is going to be who, which tribe is going to support who is going to band with who, but we are not talking about who is going to make me feel good to be a Kenyan because I have more money in my pocket.
Okay. Well, Tangi, where does the problem lie on this issue of fear?
Yes, Trevor, as I answer that, can I start from where you began? Because you began on the censor motion itself. And I think it's important to start from there so that we can put it in correct perspective. That first, and I'm sure most of Kenyans watched yesterday as the censor motion was moved in House. And I think I would like to make it clear that for things to get there, just in as far as having a member of cabinet being censured, being a sitting government minister, I would want to say that to the two cabinet secretaries that I think that is self-inflicted. In my view, it's a dent that they have inflicted on their own careers. It is not necessary in the first place because once invited to Parliament, there is nothing that is easier than just making an appearance to the House. It doesn't matter. You're not being told to bring a solution to the issue. You're being told report to the House. And report facts as they are, no matter how they look like. And then things can be picked from there. Neither are you obligated to come with a defensive position or one that is, submissive. Just get there and then engage the House. And so the motion is not in itself moved because of the reasons, the content of the discussion. It is just the failure to honor the appearance. So that needs to be clear, because in the backdrop of the fact that Kenyans are hurting, fuel prices are high. That's a reality. Kenyans are hurting, all of them, all, not a few. And like I said, only that I saw a joke which you may confirm to us whether it is true, because you happen to come from that part of the region. I saw a joke doing the rounds that guys from that area where you come from are saying that until jet fuel until jet fuel prices increases, that's when they will start moaning and groaning that they're hurting. But in the meantime, they're okay with this other one because most of the time they are flying to that part of the country. Anyway, it's a joke though, and I think a healthy one at this time of tension. But having said that, Trevor, because we all are aware of that reality that people are hurting, and then you have these two gentlemen invited to come and engage Parliament on the discussion so that Parliament can then be able to form its mind. How do we get to move from here? And ask ourselves, what are the possible solutions? And I think as far as that's concerned, let the two know, in my view, as a member of that House, that I think they failed to the extent that they failed just to appear. The rest we can deal with. And I think that was necessary to make clear, because I saw most of the comments by members of the public. They were thinking that then why don't you recommend that they be fired, they be prosecuted, they be whatever. That comes now with the dent that they have on their careers, because in future when you go around you'll be saying that, I used to serve in the cabinet between this, so what happened, and I got censured and so on. But then coming to the problem itself, or to the situation that we find ourselves in, and that's why I wanted to make that first point, so that then we can move to the next level and say that, you see, that statement and appearance would have probably helped to end the speculation. Because if you listen to what most of the people are saying, including ourselves here, we are speculating that yes, we know that it is indeed a reality, that taxation is a heavy element of the cost of fuel at the end of the day, when you get it at the pump. But the other costs, as we said here last week, Trevor, the prices of fuel are influenced by various factors, geopolitics, the demand and supply, as it were, because that's normal, and then now taxation. So what one would want then to put to rest is what is the main factor that has caused the current increases and what should be done about it. And I think that's what that would have helped to address. Let me say, Trevor, that I think also as a population there are things we have done that we shouldn't have done, in my view, as members of the public. And I speak so as one culprit myself. You see, we have given unto ourselves a culture that makes us very prone to this kind of situation, because look at the trends of life that we have adopted. If you now walk to Uhuru Highway in the next 1 hour, you will find a whole snake of traffic from here to Athi River, of one individual, each in a fuel guzzler. And yet we have a train that is commuting from the same destination to the city center, which will roll its wheels, steel wheels, on the track with empty coaches. Because we have all believed in our culture now that to look like you are somebody, like you have got muscle and that you are respectable, then you have to drive your 6-seater on your own to the city center. And I drew that parallel, that comparison the other day, Trevor. You are in Europe, you are in the US, maybe you could have happened to stop in Europe. Maybe if you didn't, I know you've been there. And look at what happens when you disembark in Finland, in Denmark, in Norway, in all those countries, in all the Scandinavia, indeed the entire, even France. I mean, you find people comfortable cycling. I stayed for a while in Japan, and you can't believe what happens. CEOs of big companies, Toyota and others, they cycle with a bicycle to the train station, and then they park their bike at the train station, and they hop into a train and shoot to their office. They render their service back to the train in the evening, back to their bike and to their house, and you find that it is an efficient, time-saving city, but also money-saving. And because we have allowed ourselves to be gullible, that's why we are targeted. Number two, also as government, would be asking ourselves in leadership, not now, but way from when we started. Give it from 2002, when we gave ourselves a new constitution, or even before, and ask ourselves what kind of policy have we driven to help ourselves? Because, by the way, we are not oil producing. That's a fact. So even government itself, when we are doing our planning as government, we should have started to think long way before. Do we still want to go into the pockets of our people, raid their money, and give it to the Arab countries all the way through? I mean, why don't we do what those countries have done? If you go right now, if you go to any of those Scandinavia countries, you'll find that most of their power right now is derived from windmills, renewable energy. You find that they're way ahead in coming up with solutions to coming up with electric cars. So I'm saying, even as we speak of the now, we also must start thinking and asking ourselves, as we complain, are we also coming up with policies that will help ourselves? So I want to summarize this by saying that, in my thinking, Trevor, that it is important that, one, we have solutions that are immediate and long-term. Let us shift from the kind of mindset that we have. Let's tell our people and urge government that it is important now to put in place and build that mass rapid transport system that we've been talking about. That it is important then, right now, that we start encouraging our people. It is healthier and okay to walk from your house to a place of work if it is just 1 kilometer from your house. Have you seen people who just live here in Ngara? They must drive to the city center. You find somebody who lives here at, I have people that I know who live just here near Museum Hill, you know, those houses in Westlands, and somebody is working in your house, you must drive to the city center. I mean, wake up 1 hour earlier and take a walk. You get what I mean? And once we tell our people that it is okay to think in a cost, money-saving, mindset, then we'll not have this problem. But the ultimate solution for now, for this moment, is for those in Treasury to sit and relook at the whole structure and ask ourselves, how do we help this solution? I would be saying this finally as a solution in my thinking. Can we look at how are we going to incentivize the other small areas of everyday living, like the SMEs, and other areas that we are taxing, such that this person you are telling that you're going to have to pay 10 shillings more for your unga, if they are going to make mandazi with that unga, can we incentivize those small businesses such that then they become profitable and you don't feel the pinch? The problem is not because you're asking more. It is because you're asking for more from people who have less. But if you help those with less to get more, they don't have a problem with paying you more. So I think that is what we should be thinking, and I believe that we would find a solution to this problem.
Honorable Nyonka, is it fair for legislators to now come back to Kenyans and complain like the rest of us, and yet they presided over the passing of the Finance Act, Section 13 of 2018, which then essentially meant Section 5(2) of the VAT of 2013 put VAT on petroleum products, which was exempt earlier on. Now they are complaining like the rest of us.
To be honest with you, we should not. But Trevor, again, sometimes it's good to just say the truth the way it is. Hardly do you find in that house that many who are there would care to read and understand the implication of whatever changes which the government brings, or whatever law that we need to change, so that then we effect or affect whatever. Number two, this is a matter that has constantly come up about the structure of our parliament as it is today. If you look at when the changes were brought to parliament about section, I think it's section 6 or something.
Section 13 is the Finance Act, Section 13.
Exactly.
Which affected Section 5(2) of the VAT.
5(2), exactly. When it was being brought to parliament, the ineptitude of us as legislators comes because we do not have the capacity and the ability to actually understand that, yes, this has been brought by the executive. You people, can you look at it and be able to conclude that this change in law, which is going to affect the taxation of fuel and other products which are affecting the ordinary mwananchi, this is what the impact is going to be. I don't think right now our Kenyan legislature has the capacity to actually analyze and look at that. And obviously, as you've heard everybody scream, that the opposition basically fizzled out after the handshake, and we've not been as thorough as we used to be before. This is something that we would have really raised at the right time. We would have interrogated, we would have challenged it, even challenged it all the way to court. But if you understand where our politics is right now, because we had to accommodate when the president, after having signed the BBI agreement with the Honorable Raila, then whatever that the presidency has always been asking for, we actually deliberately allowed it to get what it wanted. We never acted in our capacity as oversight as we are meant to be. So those are, to me, the challenges and the complications that you have when you have the opposition agreeing to work with the government which is in power. And those are the things which many Kenyans may not understand, that there's certain give and takes which have been happening. Of course, those who are against the BBI have used that argument to make it because, oh, you sacrificed whatever it was so that you could then have the benefits of that agreement that you had with the presidency. But then again, Trevor, for me, I'll speak as somebody who sits in the budget committee. Honestly, we didn't see any other option. You know, when that law was brought to our committee for evaluation and to discuss and agree on whether we are going to support it or not, we didn't see an alternative that we were going to provide to the presidency in terms of how he's going to raise revenue to start paying our debts, which are due. As we sit here, there are debts which are needed to be paid. In fact, I believe we have another, most probably about 190 billion shillings to be paid by December. Now, the question is, where do you get that money from? Those are the issues that we were looking at. And that is why many of my colleagues, when we were interrogating this matter, they said, how much money are we able to raise from fuel levy and fuel taxes plus the VAT and everything? And the conclusion we arrived at is, we looked at, right now, Kenya as a country, on a monthly basis, Kenya is importing about 10,000 cars. So in the calculation, we looked at the figures in terms of, if you are going to import 10,000 cars every month times 12 months, that's about 120,000 vehicles. We are not even looking at the environmental impact of such an importation and all that, but we are looking at the fact that these cars use fuel, and the only source that the government can actually recover revenue from was to put the tax, which then has now ended up injuring Kenyans. I believe that there has to be a way President Uhuru and these guys in the treasury can look for a way on how they can mitigate the tax which has been imposed, so that then Kenyans don't directly, because Kenyans are not really interested to know whether you are paying your debts or not. But again, as a country, if you are unable to pay your debts for whatever reason it takes, you understand what the international implications are, you understand what is going to happen to your shilling, you understand what is going to happen to your standing globally in terms of your ratings. So those are the issues I think that I look at.
Governor Mutua, the three fundamental things that Honorable Nyonka has raised, which I find very perplexing. One, the ineptitude of the legislators to have seen that this was going to have an 8% impact on the rising fuel. The issue of the opposition having failed and towing the line somehow because they're already in government, now they couldn't go against it, and that there was no alternative.
Well, I think, and I really respect my friend for his views, but I tend to disagree with a few of them. For example, you know, let me start with the bigger one, and this is all about the lack of opposition, which is very, very good point. Because when you've got an opposition, it keeps the government in check. But the lack of an opposition does not mean that a country is not being run properly. Coming together, you know, unity is important. You see, when we were fighting for independence, we came together and said, let us come together as one unit. You know, let's have unity so that we can fight the beberu and be able to win independence. Unity in yourself, in your family, is important, but it's for what purpose? I lived in the United Arab Emirates, where basically there is no opposition, but the country does not have the problems you're facing today economically. So it doesn't mean that you have to have an opposition for you to always be able to thrive economically. It depends on what is that unity for? Is it just for politics, or is it unity for economics? And I'd like to say here, maybe it's time now Kenyans who are voters start thinking about the best formations should not be formations where people unify for tribal, links, or unify for other factors, but they unified because this group of people, when they come together, regardless of their tribe and whatever, they can provide a good economic, solution to our problems. Now, the issue of the 8% and all that, and you call it ineptitude, I don't think it's ineptitude. I think it's what, and I agree with what Mheshimiwa has said here, my good friend, it's what was presented to them. They had to come up with a solution. The challenge, though, is this: what was presented to them was what was already existing. There was no attempt to broaden the base. There was no attempt to think outside the box. I heard the other day a certain person who says he's running for president was here in this Citizen, where he's telling Kenyans to tighten their belt and look forward to harder times to come. You know, that's a message, that's a mentality they have, that things cannot get better, because their thinking is based on what there is on the table. Nobody's thinking outside the base. Wamesha throw in the towel, and somebody says they want to run for president, and they're already saying that it will be better, it will be worse. You know, meaning that they have no solutions, because their solutions are minimal. We have to start thinking outside the box. We have to start thinking about what we need to do. I like the thinking of, you know, the cars are coming, so let's add fuel to, you know. But you see, when you add the cost of fuel, it has an implication to the cost of living, cost of paraffin, cost of you know, machines to be run, industrialization, everything goes up. And when you're in a country where my good friend Senator Matangi said, Dr. Matangi here, that we're in a country that is already reeling because the cost of living is very high, it becomes even more painful. Yeah. You can use those two words together. What is the solution? We have to be able to have a country whereby the people who are running the economics of this country, from the top leadership, are thinking about how to broaden the base, how do we provide employment. Yeah. People are asking, why is employment very important? In the United States, and I said you're smart enough, you might have noticed this when you're there. In the United States, they always give figures every week on what is the state of employment
and unemployment,
as a national employment rate. Yeah. Why? Because of a principle in economics called, it's a consumer-driven economy. Let's take, for example, you take Mwangangi here, or Njoroge, or Kenodia, or Omondi, who has been sitting at home, they get a job. When they get a job, they have money to go to the shop and buy mafuta. When they start buying mafuta, and several of them are buying mafuta, the shopkeeper all of a sudden realizes there are more people coming to buy mafuta. So he or she employs Mwikali or Akinyi or you know, or Wamboi to come and work in that shop. Now, when they work in that shop, this Mwikali takes money back to the mother, who goes back to the shop to buy what? To buy the mafuta. All of a sudden, the demand has gone from this single employment of Omondi. Yeah. You know? And as a result, now the shop owner tells the factory, mafuta inaenda sana, nahitaji more mafuta. So the factory does, they open a night shift, and they employ more people because they need night shift. Those people employed now go back and they go and buy more mafuta because now they have more money in their pockets.
So it's a domino effect.
All of a sudden, the farmer is being told we need no raw materials. Yeah. The economy is growing from that employment. But is anybody in this country today, as a young man sitting there today, do you have confidence with all these players there that they are going to provide more jobs to you? Are they even thinking about employment of one person? Or they are thinking about sustaining the status quo? You know, they're talking about having different gadgets. You know, they tell you, have this gadget. It's very minimalistic in the kind of way that we think. So if you're thinking about getting this country forward, you think about unity, you think about these things, it has to be unity for economics, not just for whatever. And finally, you know, when I was working for Mwai Kibaki, and we sat in a meeting with the late David Mweraria, Anyang' Nyong, Governor Anyang' Nyong, the late David Nalo and others, about recovery of this country. Yeah. And there was a feeling that we needed to be able to collect taxes. And I remember that's when Mr. Waweru was the Commissioner General of the KRA. And Kibaki decided to lead from the front in terms of collecting taxes. And he said, kulipa ushuru ni kujitegemea. Yeah. You know, I actually came up with that slogan for KRA, so I'm very proud of it. Yeah. And as a result, we're able to collect taxes from different areas and broadening the base in a certain way that Kenyans did not feel it, but we're able to sustain our budget at the time without any external funding at that time. Yeah. Where did we go wrong? Because we have gone back to what we had before during the Moi era of a process-oriented government rather than a result-oriented government. And for us to be able to create employment, for us to be able to give our people the future they deserve, we need to go to a result-oriented government, so that when reports are taken to parliamentary committees, they are not just being given what there is on the table, they are given options of other areas of assisting this economy. All right.
Ometangi? As we wind up on this and talk about the deep state as we close.
Okay, Trevor, maybe my quick comment will be on, first, let me start from where my running mate has closed it. I think just two words on that question of, what is the role of the opposition opposition in ensuring that you have got responsibility and at the end of the day that culminates in growth of an economy, and I think we tend, unfortunately, to overplay either of the two, whichever we get. But I think some of the lessons would want to learn, if you ask me, is if you look at countries, as you've said here before, that have shown healthy signs, that a form of government in a certain way can help a country to grow. It all points out to what you would call, in quotes, guided democracy, or what you would want to call soft dictatorship, if you like. Because, and this is where you look at models like where my running mate here was talking about, he refers to a country like Dubai. But even more models. If you look at the leadership of the late Prime Minister of Singapore, Lee Kuan Yew, and it has been a major discussion in many economic forums as to the kind of leadership that he gave to lift Singapore from where it was. But it had those elements. If you look at other countries, like countries that have risen, like South Korea, under President Park. It started the same way, and it was, complained against as a dictatorship in quotes, but soft one. If you look at countries like probably, China, since Mao, and then under Deng Xiaoping, you see same thing. You see, there is some sense of proper control of how you drive the economy. And the checks and balances, the limits you establish, and then I think that brings about the development you might want. I think the plague that deals as the death blow is when we are given the window to put our hands and heads right into then that democratic space. It's what we decide to do with it, because in my view I think we overplay it. We think that it is intended and meant to sabotage and stop everything. And that's why you find that we build this, and then the opposition will have the right to come and destroy it. And then the next term you're in opposition, so you destroy what the other one who was in leadership built this time. And so it becomes a vicious cycle. And I think that is the balance that eventually we must find as a country for us to be able to make progress. I've seen, and you hear many people now try to refer to Rwanda all the time under Paul Kagame. And Kagame has been doing a lot of work trying to copy what Singapore did. Good luck to him, if he would succeed in that way. But at the end of the day, democracy must find its space, in my view. And that does not mean that you have to be president for life for things to work anyway. That's their story. But I think there has to be that balance in my thinking, that eventually then you would have an economy growing. Part of what we would not excuse, in my view, Trevor, is, for example, like the story we talked about earlier, of companies or institutions like Kenya Power and Lighting Company, and other major monopolies that have been operating in this country. And you'll be asking yourself, why would a power supplier that is a monopoly to a commodity that is used by every single living Kenyan declare bankruptcy, go into into what you would call the morgue or mortuary in terms of economic health, and the opposite of another company maybe which you would want to describe as a close monopoly like Safaricom, declare unbelievable profits selling a commodity that is not necessarily something that must be used by Kenyans, and that is purchased on preference, and yet one declares healthy profits that are unbelievable. The other one is in ICU, yet the one that's in ICU is protected by law to sell that commodity, and not cheaply, but expensively for that matter. And that tells you that even as we relook and ask ourselves, how do we then get to grow economy, we must put hard facts where they are. I think we have this thing of just absolutely mismanaging everything that has been put under the protection of government.
Okay.
I mean, the stories are endless, you know, from Postal Corporation, which now gave birth to what we have now, you know, Safaricom after it was privatized. We have the stories of what has been happening. You've seen what now is happening in our public institutions. You saw the story about, you know, our universities the other day, from, you know, Moi University to the other universities now heading to receivership, others being invited to come and write statements because the institutions are now operating, you know, in debt, just because they're public institutions. And what I'm saying is that we have to make a serious case for responsibility and discipline, and that is discipline in running of our institutions. Because unless we say this, Trevor, then you're going to have Kenya Airways now going into another institution to happen the same way. Okay. Otherwise, I mean, why would there be a bill in our budget to float 25 billion to Kenya Airways to stay alive? Okay. Because then the next thing you're going to see is another 20 billion to put Kenya Power back to life, another 5 billion for Moi University, another few billions for another university. So even as we complain about what we are complaining about, you know, the prices of fuel, which is legitimate, legitimate complaint, I think eventually we will have to address those ills. Finally, I would just want to say it is the seesaw, the balance between, you know, responsibility and making sure that those that are given that responsibility then carry it to the point of consequence. Okay. Such that if this is what you have sown, then it has to be what you have to reap. Okay.
We are running out of time here, Honorable Nyonga, but we have to talk about this issue of the deep state. From where you stand, does the deep state even exist? Start from.
But can I just say a word?
Okay, one word.
Just one word.
Okay.
I wanted to just raise the issue about what is happening in Rwanda and what has happened in Lee Kuan Yew's Singapore. Yeah. The truth is, if you look at both the countries, there are certain trends which exist. For example, in Singapore, what made Singapore become what it is because Lee Kuan Yew believed that meritocracy, the ability to pick the best qualified in your country, to be able to handle an institution and allow them that leeway for them to actually achieve the results for you. Yeah. That has been our weakest link. Instead of employing people who are qualified to be lecturers, professors, to be the ones who are managing institutions, whether they are parastate or not, we go this tribal thing, we pick our cousins, our brothers, whether they are semi-illiterate or whatever, for expediency. Unless we solve this problem, I agree with my brothers that we will not go anywhere. I believe, and I wanted to say this where His Excellency Governor Mutua is, the reason why the Kibaki government succeeded is because there was a give and take during the coalition government. Yeah. There was, we were monitoring each other like friendly cats. If you look at all the projects that President Kibaki did, there was a very careful way on how he borrowed money, and that money was used expeditiously. The record is there. So I don't think that we should really need to invent anything. All we needed to do is look at what has happened before and pick that as the best. Now, I'll come to the issue of the deep state. To be honest with you, I thought when Governor Kimemia was talking, I didn't think that he was saying what he said. But it looks like he actually said what he said because he was there during the administration of President Kibaki. Yeah. You remember the debacle about whether Musalia Mudavadi could be given the baton and all that. What I believe is that this is not necessarily a Kenyan phenomena. If you look at American news, and like I've said, you've been there. I mean, right now, even Joe Biden, Donald Trump's people are busy saying how the elections was actually rigged. There was no free and fair election. It was the deep state. All right. And yet these are people, the people who actually made sure that Biden was confirmed as the president after the election had been ratified, were people used to work for Trump because they believed that the elections were free and fair. Is there a possibility that there could be certain individuals who want continuity in a government, who want steadiness in a government, who want to hand over government which then tomorrow can look like it's continuing to put Kenyans together and Kenya moves in the right direction. I believe there could be. Do I have the evidence? I don't. But I believe that this talk now creates the scenario that you're going to have in a few months coming, because as we move closer to the elections, you're going to start having everybody scream how they are going to be rigged. The elections are already predetermined. We are being rigged out because our side is the side which has got a message, and you can see the crowds we are drawing. Yeah. I believe that at the end of it, even when you may want to say that yes, there could be a deep state which is going to coordinate, like now I'm sure Governor Mutua, as he's finished his second term, I'm sure in Machakos County there are people who are saying Governor Mutua wants his friend to be the one to take over from him, you know how it is, or he wants so and so to. People will all talk about that. Yeah. But at the end of it all, I hope IBC will give us a credible election, and I hope Kenyans will go and vote so that we are able to get a person who Kenyans want. Okay. My feeling actually is, if Kenyans want to get somebody who is crazy to become our president, that's their bed they want to lay on. Give it to them. Okay. Yes.
Governor Mutua, you've been in government for a while. Does the deep state exist?
You know, when I served under Moi Kibaki, and I'm writing this in my book, I was in a very privileged position to see how government ran. And I used to see the frustration of Ambassador Francis Mudhaura. At that time, we didn't talk about deep state. We talked about the kitchen cabinet. Apparently, there was a kitchen cabinet. So there's a cabinet, there's a kitchen cabinet, where made up of government officials who basically ran the show. And we used to wonder, where is this kitchen cabinet? Because Kibaki never met people outside the formal structures. It's very important to note that a government operates on formal structures. It is when you've got informal structures that you have a problem. And the reason that Kibaki's government really succeeded is because under the guidance of Mwai Kibaki and the work done by Francis Mudhaura was that we did not allow another view outside government to come in. So it was basically government led from the front. But it was led from the front because Kibaki was very clear on where he was going. I remember one time in State House where people say that you have to win, you have to win. And he said, no, I don't have to win. I don't want to hear of anybody or planning to rig. Staki mambo ya kuiba kura, because he had been there. He had been rigged. He felt he had been rigged during all those times under DP ran for president. He said, no, I want to win and win because Kenyans have voted for me. So basically, he led from the front. Is Uhuru Kenyatta leading from the front? Has he really told his people, I want this to be done, this to be done? Because unless Uhuru Kenyatta makes it very clear, this is what he wants and this is how he wants it done, then we've got all these people coming in and making themselves the so-called deep state. I agree with Kimemia when he talks about that within government there are institutions and people who have instruments of power and they can influence. And they can influence results. They can try to control results. That has been there for a very long time. But I'm very optimistic about where we're going as Kenyans. Yep. And some of us who will be running for president, my running mate here and others, we're optimistic that we'll be able to be victorious because Kenyans are fed up of the past and Kenyans want change. They want a fresh way of doing things, whether there's deep state or there's no deep state. So it is a balancing act, you know. And if there was really deep state, somebody was asking the other day, how come the Jubilee government lost the recent by-election in ilikuwa pia Kiambaa. If the deep state is that powerful and they can rig elections and these are small elections, why did they lose Kiambaa? Is it there or is it manufactured in people's minds to giving it power and credence that it does not have? The challenge we've had, and I think this is where the Building Bridges initiative came in, was that we've had elections that have been too tight to call. Where you've got, it's 50%, 54, 48, and all that. We need to get to a point where people make a decision, it's one person like they did in 2002, and say this person gets 60, 70, 80% of the vote. But you cannot do that with the same players that have been there for a long time. We need to inject something fresh, something different for Kenyans to say, yes, you guys have done well, stand aside, let's now get to somebody who is new, who can actually give us that, what I call the air of good feeling as we go ahead. And as the 5th president, because it usually happens with the 5th president. If you look at John Monroe in the US, somebody fresh who people did not think he was part of the clamor of the people who have been there for a long time.
Okay. Umatangi?
Yes, Trevor, I think from where I sit, if you ask me, I would say I think and I believe that deep state exists.
It exists?
I think it exists.
Okay.
I can tell you and how and why, in my view. Okay. It's only to begin with. I think it's just the definition, it's the terminology. Yeah. You can call it deep state. You know, my running mate here prefers to call it a kitchen cabinet, but there exists by necessity and need and circumstances. It should and does exist, in my view, because one. And you know, let's correct the view that deep state would exist for purposes of rigging an election.
That's where you're going right now.
But by circumstances and definition, I say this, Trevor, that you know, it is all about interests. Politics, its succession and continuity and running of country. Interest is central. You know, be it community interest, be it individual interest, be it the national interest of the country itself. It's all about interests. And by natural format, the succession of political continuity is carried out by politicians. And you know, politicians happen to be very fluid people, if you like. I mean, you know, we have persuasion towards these, you know, these beliefs. We have a leaning towards this type of leadership. We have a leaning towards this kind of people or this kind of person. And all the time when a new formation will come to take over, most of the time there will be high interest to want to change quite a lot. Sometimes even to overflow to wanting to change what should remain constant. You know, and there are factors that remain constant. And that's what you find in the divisions or silos of government. That's why you find that there is a huge element of whom you call bureaucrats, there are technocrats, and then there are us politicians, you know, the political leaders. And so when I get elected, as we might with my friend here, and we are running government that time, so we'll look at the whole landscape and decide that you want to remove Trevor. And because if you remove Trevor, then you put him the other. And what Trevor was working on there were these constants within Treasury, for that matter, or maybe constants within this policy agreement between ourselves and maybe another country, or even how the system should run itself. And because we wanted to fit us at that particular time, we may want to change. There has to be those people, or that unit, or those units. That's why I said it depends on the definition you want to give it, that would require to keep the hot room and cold room of running the country at the temperatures that they should, without having to change everything every time a new leadership comes into place. And I believe that it may be defined and sounds bad, because when evils or ills occur within the running of government, then it is attributed to something called deep state, which is amorphous. So that if somebody gets killed somewhere, they say it's deep state. If somebody runs into some bad luck, or maybe their property is auctioned, they have a problem, we are running with government somewhere, they say it is deep state. But for purposes of ensuring that there remains what you would call now the state itself, or the country itself, I believe if you allowed that to be all the time, the direction to be influenced by the political leadership that is in place for that 5-year cycle, then we would go east, would go west, would go north, would go south, according and depending on who is in power. And I think that is the attribute that one would say, in my view, that you require that central unit, or that unit of people, laws, systems that exist, that ensures that the direction remains the same. And I believe that's what you would call deep state. So in my view, it doesn't have to be a bad thing, only that it has been given that connotation, that it sounds bad because it is responsible for finishing people, taking people's property, sacking people from positions. Definitely that's the story that has been attributed to what we call deep state.
Yeah.
I believe finally that because we need a country, would want people to come and inherit a system that is continuous. Sometimes you see we have a propensity of even disobeying our constitution, and you have seen many people doing that. Why wouldn't we, for example, want to respect the institution, maybe like the judiciary, that you would want to liken it to how a deep state functions, such that the tenets of laws which have been put in place remain constant, whether it is CJ Mother Kome in place or whether it is another CJ who comes in place. The same thing should happen to the presidency, though it is a politically inherited position, that when the president goes, the constants will remain the same, that the compass still points north, that the country moves forward, and then when the next person comes, sits in the same position, then we continue.
All right, I'll give you guys a chance, 1 minute each for closing remarks. Let's bring up the feedback and then I'll give you a chance for closing remarks. Very brief, 30 seconds only, because we ran out of time here. Atanas Mavuti says, on the rising cost of living, what do you expect when the entire opposition is in government? Cost of living will continue to rise until a time when we will have an opposition which will speak on behalf of Kenyans, okay? Odongo Rolex says, why are senior politicians not talking about fuel price? Raila and Ruto, they all claim that they are for common mwananchi. Kenyans should now understand who stands for them now. Ray Nasamo says, Honorable Nyonka has raised serious issues. 1, independent power providers, and 2, corruption at government. These are the issues making it impossible for ordinary citizens to sustain themselves. Jacob Abere says, on fuel price, let the 2 ministries avoid culture of blame game. On energy policy, let Keter answer. If Kenya started refining oil, then Munyes be brought to chopping board and tell us why they are making fuel users go crazy. Raina Sam again says, tell Wamatangi that in those countries he is naming, they have an efficient public transport infrastructure. Let him tell us how corruption is handled there. Kenya has a broken transport system. It's about leadership grounded on mediocrity. Okay? Frank Orinde says, on the other day, Francis Kimemia gave just a small insight about deep state. Interesting revelations, I must say. One clear thing now is that deep state does exist. Okay? Kent says, system is a myth and a creation of those who want to justify their rigging and corrupt ways. Jacob says, KEMSA graft report, the case in point at end is not going anywhere. What we are going to see is a political foray for those in other sides of the plate, salivating for our time to eat, period. Okay? Abdirahman Ali says, KEMSA report is deep. The issue lies with courts. We can tell judgment in that, pay this amount or serve jail. Then the accused does payment and next minute he or she is free. This is Kenya for us. Jenga Wakungu says, KEMSA is one of the most important aspects that will tarnish Uhuru's legacy, being touching directly one of his agenda 4 pillars of universal health. The culprits must be punished even as we recover the stolen funds. That's it. All right. Let's take closing remarks very briefly. Honorable Nyonka, just 30 seconds.
Thank you. Trevor, I think for me, Kenya is really a great country. Kenya just needs good people to fix some of these issues. They are fixable. If you look at international organizations, you look at a country like Rwanda, every single success story in Rwanda, whether it's their transport system, whether it's the city of Kigali, whether it's who runs their water, the electricity in Rwanda, if power goes off in 15 minutes and you have not been reconnected, somebody loses their job. Who fixed all that? Kenyans. Kenyans are the ones who fixed and have trained Rwandese to fix their roads at 15 million shillings a kilometer. What are we doing in Kenya? We're at 70, 90 million shillings a kilometer. I mean, we just need, I've stopped thinking that even structures or even a strong executive is really the issue. Unless we fix the issue of corruption in our country and make sure we run our country as an enterprise, which is supposed to be like a business, we are heading nowhere. And we must also fix our politics. Our politics is sometimes too toxic. I would love to see Governor Mutua, who's running, if Wamatangi decides to run, I would like people to just engage and discuss with Kenyans. What can we do? I mean, we've never had an economic conference. in this country for people to actually say, this is what the mess is. Can't you fix it?
Okay.
And we can fix it.
All right.
Yes.
Matangi, 30 seconds.
Yes, Trevor, I think, why don't I probably just have a word on that tweet that was sent by one of our friends there, that yes, indeed, it is true that those countries that I've mentioned have had a record of beyond zero tolerance for corruption. And one of the countries that I mentioned has cases in history. Remember the president of South Korea, who was here the other day, and she happens to be the daughter of a former president, President Park Geun. She returned to her country, was promptly jailed, and she had several counts, some for stealing, but of key interest is that she was jailed for influence peddling. And besides that, her predecessor, the second predecessor before, was jailed not only because of the things he did when he was president, but even when he was a CEO of a huge conglomerate like Hyundai. The CEO of Hyundai, who happened to have been a president, was also jailed in South Korea. And not only that, 2 prime ministers of the same country. What I'm saying is that all those countries have a record of zero tolerance, all of them. And to build infrastructure, to build institutions, to get the country running, the first thing that countries deal with is the question of corruption. And I think we had touched on that a bit earlier. When we have time, we'll touch on it next time. I believe that's the way to go. On the major topic of today, I believe we have to ensure that we lift the burden of the shoulders of Kenyans. Let's relook at how should we then deal with the responsibilities of government to repay debt, to balance its budget, without necessarily having to take this responsibility right to the pocket of the common mwananchi in terms of especially like the current fuel pricing. That certainly must be reviewed to ensure that the cost of living comes down.
Right, Governor Mutua.
Finally, just 4 quick points. The first one is to say congratulations to Omanyala, the fastest man in Kenya.
And Africa.
In Africa, actually, on a racetrack, because there's some fellas out there ukisikia pap anaenda kama bunduki na kama risasi. I want to he made us very proud, and congratulations, and I invite him to come and visit us in Machakos, walk around. We're building some new stadiums, building about 9 new stadiums. 4 should be ready soon, and so invite him to come, and congratulations. Number 2 is I talked about the era of good feeling, and that is where we are as a country. And when I listen to my friend Nyonka here talk about the things that we need to do as a country, are we doing the right things? Are we choosing the right people? And just to remind you again of that quote by Angelo, that people will forget what you say, people will forget even what you do to them or what you did to them, but people do not forget how you make them feel. How do you feel as a Kenyan about the current crop of leadership and the people vying for president? Which one makes you feel confident or feel that you can trust him? It's very important to have a sense of hope. The next thing is about this stupidity of tribalism that Mheshimiwa Nyonka is talking about. I mean, look at us here. I'm from Ukambani, he's from Kiambu, Kikuyu land, you're from Luo, my relatives in Luo, he's from Kisiland. Nobody here cares what tribe we are. When Mutua is speaking, when Matangi is giving his points and talk about Lincoln, when we're talking about all the points we're talking, nobody is saying we ni Mkamba ni Mkisia naongea. We are Kenyans. We are one people with brains. This thing of all the time thinking about tribalism as the only way forward is basically, it's a stupidity of tribalism that has been given to us by people who want to continue controlling us so that we don't feel good. And I want to feel good, But it comes down to show me the money. Where is the money in this country? People are broke. We need to start talking about unity, but unity of economic ideas, unity of people who will be able to take us forward, not unity for the sake of unity.
All right.
I like the example that my friend gave about Rwanda and the things that are there. But you go to Rwanda, the maxim is like what they have in America. It's very similar,